morning. Welcome back to day 2 of the Road to 2028 Summit. It's great to have you with us this morning. Yesterday we heard from some amazing leaders and some new voices to the movement for clean air and climate action. Russell Westbrook shared his excitement, our co-chair of the Road to 2020, the opportunity to improve our region's air quality while bringing investment to all of our communities, including the children that play on the courts and fields across our region every day so they can breathe cleaner air. LA Council member Katie Yaroslavsky highlighted the social and economic benefits that can stem from expanding our clean transit options in the region. And so many other great leaders talked about what they're going to do to commit to action by the time the world arrives here in Los Angeles in 2028. Those are just a couple of the highlights. We have some great speakers today, but really at the core of today's conversation and yesterday's and the work going forward over the next 2 years is what can the legacy of the 2028 Games be in terms of clean air, climate action, and investment in our economy, in our communities, in our entrepreneurs, in our workforce. And through our partners, we have talked about yesterday, and we'll continue to talk today, about the nearly $600 million in commitments to action that are being made over the course of the Road to 2028 Summit, and others are soon to follow. And those investments include investing in EV chargers, clean energy, battery storage, heat pumps, and low-income families' homes, and so many other actions that are taking place, including a recent grant that CEC just announced for LAUSD with LACI and LA Unified School District to help put in charging in the city of Los Angeles to electrify the school buses, the yellow school buses that we see all the time and are going to be part of also shuttling people to and from the games in 2028. I'll just add that we are really thrilled and honored to have Mayor Karen Bass with us here today to talk about this very topic and what can we do as Angelenos, as a region, not just on behalf of ourselves, but on behalf of future generations, and show how we can lead by example for the rest of the state, for the nation, and the world for that matter. And with that, please join me in welcoming for a special fireside chat Mayor Karen Bass, who's outlined a clear framework to make the 2028 Games a Games for All. And Mark Watts, Executive Director of C40.
Good morning, everyone.
Well, welcome. Thank you for being with us, Mayor. Thank you for being with us. Mark, coming in from London, we appreciate you. So I talked a little bit about in my opening remarks, sort of the spirit of the Road to 2020 is like, how do we inspire people to make commitments to action? Obviously, the city and under your leadership is doing so much. Official Organizing Committee is doing so much. Metro, of course. But there's so many other things that are happening here in LA, led by civic leaders. Of course, the Utility Department, Water and Powder, Dave Hansen, the interim general managers here, the work that they're doing to lead, President Alan Marks from the board. But we're really here to talk about what else can we inspire that could be done or reach a major milestone by the time the world arrives in 2028 to advance investment in our communities. So, Mayor Bass, you and Mark were talking backstage about C40, a unique network of mayors around the world working together on climate change. But many of these mayors have or are preparing to host major events like the Games. As you look to those other mayors and cities for inspiration, what have you learned from mega events, including the recent World Cup Games here in LA, that you are hoping to leverage during the 2028 Games to advance your goals for LA?
Well, first of all, good morning, everyone, and thank you so much for the opportunity to be here. And I just want to congratulate you and all that you're doing at LACI. And I just have to say that, I saw my former colleague, Ted Lieu there. I was in Congress for a while, and it has been such a pleasure and an honor to be home where climate change is not a controversy at all, something that everyone in the city and the state embraces. And I've just been so fortunate to have two mayors who preceded me who left an incredible legacy and footprint for me to build on. And one of our mayors is right here, Mayor Eric Garcetti, Ambassador Eric Garcetti, and his leadership in C40. And so it's been easy for me in so many ways after spending 12 years fighting over whether climate change was an issue. And so one of the things that I learned from Paris, and we're talking about this, is in Paris, everybody was involved. And so the World Cup is still going on. We have a few days left. And our theme of Games for All, we meant it to be literally that, which means we don't want the Olympics to just impact a few neighborhoods. We don't want people to come to Los Angeles and visit the Hollywood sign, the Beverly Hills sign, which is not LA, and say they've been to LA. But all of our neighborhoods and all of our diversity. So what we've tried to do with the World Cup, we have what's called Kick It in the Park, of where I will be leaving and going to right after here, and FIFA.
Putting on some different shoes.
Putting on different shoes. This is true. And much cooler clothes, because it's going to be very hot today. But the whole point of that was to build that spirit where everybody is involved and everybody is invested. And so climate change is not something that is just, an afterthought, because again, it isn't a controversy here. Yeah. So we're using it as an opportunity to really accelerate our infrastructure improvement. As a matter of fact, on Monday, we were celebrating the 2 years until the Olympics, and I chose to celebrate it at the front of an infrastructure project on a street in South LA, which essentially will build bike lanes that will connect to our metro line and take you directly to the Coliseum. I also, another job as mayor, Mayor Garcetti didn't tell me about this one, but I also will be chairing the MTA board, our Metropolitan Transit Authority board, and so I'm right there, deep in transportation as well, and that is a big effort, is to accelerate public transportation. We just opened up a major line that will go through West LA, or all the way to UCLA to downtown. And that's what it will be eventually. We opened up a segment of it. So really promoting public transportation, really getting people involved and understanding. It's not just in LA, if I know a lot of people are from LA, but if you're not, I don't know what your experience has been with our traffic, but we are a car culture that is slowly shifting, and it's a generational shift as well.
Yeah, I mean, in the D-line extension, I mean, if people get on it, they're amazed how incredible that line is. And also shout out to you and the city with the progress you've made on electrifying the LA DOT fleet, the dash buses. It's been phenomenal. Thank you for your kind words about LACI. We're proud to be a partner with the city, and thank you for your support of the organization and continuing our work. And one of the things we've tried to do, and your former Deputy Mayor Nancy Sutley was really supportive of us doing this, is how can we as an organization be a model for other cities? We have a lot of visitors who come to our amazing La Cret's Innovation Campus, owned by the Department of Water and Power. We're blessed and honored to be the stewards of the campus on behalf of the city. But the learnings we've had in working with the city agencies and the mayor's office have given us an ability to work with other cities, and that really was the foundation of the partnership with C40, Mark. And we began a few years ago on the City Climate Innovation Challenge. Helps us work with cities to leverage innovation and the strength of the network and achieve climate goals, but really how to also bring our expertise in working with startups, so expertise in working with cities and startups. And that work that you've been doing with us, your team, your great team, has allowed us to do a lot to help other cities invite innovation and pilot the innovation as we've done here in LA. But you're also working on clean energy, heat resilience, greening the Port of LA. Can you talk to us a little bit about how other cities in the C40 network are tackling these priorities, especially at a time when, in the U.S. in particular, state and city level action is more important than ever?
Yeah, sure. But first, just a big congratulations, Mayor, and to you, Matt, and to LACI, because I think this focus on the road to 2028, really taking advantage of the huge investment you can get behind the Olympics and using it to transform the city. We've seen what a difference that's made in other cities. We were talking about Paris, Mayor, but also in my home city in London, in Rio. And I think you may not know it, Mayor, but LACI's famous across C40. It's the envy of many other mayors because of that focus you have on supporting innovation. And when I travel a lot around the world for C40, I guess where I see some sort of similar kind of things, really hard, setting a challenge that the city needs to solve, and supporting entrepreneurs, supporting startups, supporting the rest of the public sector to meet them. I was been in quite a lot in China this year, where there's huge advances on clean energy, on clean vehicles, but half of the world's construction takes place in China, and still a huge amount of pollution and emissions locked up in the materials we use to build. And it's very interesting that the government has set a challenge for an entire city, the city of Qingdao, to get to zero construction waste. And that has then spurned a whole slew of new companies that are now picking up that challenge. I went to visit one of them, Green Sale, that is manufacturing a new, very clean concrete out of what would have been waste construction material. So we see that kind of approach. I think thinking about this, the world-leading success you have here in shifting out of coal and gas to clean energy, and I've seen the results of that and the investment of that. Most of the cities in the world don't have the advantage of what you have with the DWP. I was in Melbourne, Australia recently, where the mayor has essentially no control over the local utilities, but still has managed to get now 40% of homes in Melbourne, Australia, have solar PV on their roofs as a result of the incentives that have been put in place, cleverly worked out with the state and the city, but also 100% of the city's own facilities are powered by renewable power because they entered into power purchasing agreements with lots of the rest of the public sector, including universities, and have got a new wind farm built as a result. So I think you can really see the benefit of those kind of partnerships. And maybe, last one, I'd be remiss not to talk about something, a collaboration between cities, because that's what C40 is all about. We've just had 45 cities launch a global urban data centers pact, because this is an unprecedented scale of investment going into our cities. Many mayors now saying to me more than half of the planning applications on their desks are for data centers. Wow. Done badly, it's a disaster for energy in the city, for water, for people's bills. Done well, it can really bring a lot of extra public amenity. And so we're now seeing 45 cities joining together to say, basically to these big global companies, anywhere you go in the world in the major cities, you're going to meet the same response about what we need in terms of sustainability, transparency, and people's needs.
Congratulations on that. It's such an important task. I know many mayors in other parts of the country, especially where the data centers are huge, bigger than we have probably here in LA, but it's such an important question to help tackle. We were talking about extreme heat backstage. We were talking about all the things that we're going to have to think about as we prepare for the games. But you haven't just talked about the legacy of former Mayor Garcetti, who I was honored to work for, but you've led too, and you're doubling down. Can you talk to us about the great climate action plan you released a few months ago? And congratulations, by the way, and thank you.
Sure, thank you. I appreciate that. Some of the work of the previous mayors, and of course, most notably, Eric Garcetti, looking at those plans and then saying, how can we act on the following items? And so we've come up with many, many, many items in the action plan, and then giving them an achievable, date for completion. So, a few things in that are underway right now. I was in the Mojave Desert last year to turn the switch on one of the nation's largest solar farms that will provide energy to over 500,000 homes. We have a water recycling plant in the San Fernando Valley that will come online in 2028. That's 500 million gallons of recycled water, and water is a big issue here because we have to import so much of our water. So accelerating those projects, one of the things that I've worked on in the last couple of years is to have a citywide infrastructure plan, as I mentioned, because right now, the way infrastructure is handled is the 15 council districts kind of handle it on their own. So if you have a really inspired council member, then you get a lot done. Not so much if the council member doesn't want to focus on that. But there needs to be a citywide system of that. And so we're going to be implementing that as well. And so with all of these goals in mind, our focus for that is to focus on the venues of where the Olympics will be, to use that as the catalyst, but again, to do it in a way that everybody is involved. Because when the Olympics leave, what will the legacy be? We are still benefiting from the legacy of the 1984 Olympics that I shared with you, which Mayor Bradley provided funding for a foundation, LA84, that covers sports in inner city areas, and it continues to do that today. And LA28 has started with a similar legacy, providing funding for Play LA, which allows sports in inner cities and helps the city, and all cities are strapped for money, so it's very, very helpful. But using the Olympics as the incentive for the capital infrastructure plans that, again, involve a lot of bike lanes, but we also have cool streets now with sidewalks, and with asphalt. And LA, today we're supposed to be over 100 in some areas, and we were talking before about how many homes, if not most, didn't have air conditioning in LA. I know my home certainly hasn't had air conditioning, and in the first few years, I moved there in 2010, the first few years I didn't need it. And in just that short time span, I do need it now, because things are really, really changing rapidly, and the city is getting so much hotter as we're experiencing a global heat wave in different places.
Yeah, it's a real challenge and changes everything. The grid, obviously, the electrical grid has to be prepared and everything. So, we've talked about transportations, we've talked about EVs, you've talked a little bit about some of the legacy in other forms. Are there any other legacy projects you hope to see happen by the games, or that people are inspired to take action on their own in the spirit of your leadership?
Well, there's definitely many, but, we do have the largest public EV charging system basically in the nation.
Yeah.
And wanting to see that and making sure, and one of the things about EV chargers that, is no surprise to anybody, is wanting to make sure that there's equitable distribution. Yeah. So a lot of people in more affluent areas might have private EV chargers, which, by the way, do cause a lot of problems. We certainly saw that with the fires in Palisades, where people had 2 chargers in their home. Yeah. And, the lithium that you just have to allow to burn, I think, we didn't think of some of the unintended consequences. So now we have to keep those things in mind as well. Mm-hmm. And so those are a couple of examples. But when you fly over the city, if you're not from here, or when you leave, you will notice that there's huge gaps in the tree canopy. And of course, the inner city areas are very, very hot. And, I grew up loving the palm trees, but not thinking about it. It offers absolutely no shade. We like them, though, but they're problematic. And so really wanting to address that as well. Obviously, that's a longer-term issue, but still, there's a lot that can be done before 2028.
Yeah, you'll be excited to hear that tree people, I don't want to steal their thunder, but they're going to make a commitment to action here today to announce a major investment that they're rallying people around.
Meet me backstage.
To get trees planted in communities that lack tree canopy. Well, thank you for that, Mayor. Mark, yesterday, along with Uber, a partner of LACI's, a partner of yours, and a partner of LA28's for that matter, C40 announced your new campaign working with the City of LA, Plug into LA, which will support drivers and keep our cities moving through ride-hail and delivery services to go electric. Mayor just talked about increasing EV charging access, and a lot of the early adopters for EVs in lower-income neighborhoods are TNC drivers, Uber and Lyft drivers. How important are these types of public-private partnerships to advance clean energy and help cities meet their ambitious clean air targets?
I think increasingly important, and for us at C40, we're all about collaboration and partnership between cities, often between NGOs. That Urban Data Centers Pact I mentioned, of course, was a partnership with climate mayors here in the US. But increasingly now, partnerships, public-private partnerships are coming to the fore. And it's interesting with this Plug in LA and the partnership with Uber, because our relationship with Uber originally started when in London they came to us and said, even though London's got relatively high number of EV charging opportunities for Europe, they weren't in the right places for where the Uber drivers were living. And so they wanted a partnership to try and get them where those drivers, because they're the people using their vehicles the most. Here, when we talked about doing something in LA, as the mayor's just alluded to, they said that, the charging infrastructure is not the issue, it's fantastic. The challenge is that the drivers are put off by the cost of vehicles and aren't taking advantage of the incentives that are actually out there. So I think that's kind of insight that you're getting from a kind of major company that can then work with an NGO, work with the city. And hopefully the intention of this is 500 plus drivers between now and the Olympics are going to take up the incentives that are there, buy their electric vehicles, save money themselves up to $10,000. But also, you're doing a huge amount to expand transit, et cetera, which is absolutely the right thing. There's going to need to be a lot of ride hail as well during a big event like the Olympics. And as Tessa from Uber was saying yesterday, often for someone who ends up buying an electric vehicle, their first experience of it is when they're in an Uber or a taxi. And they see how smooth it is, how quiet it is, what a nice journey it is. So this is a real opportunity to really shift perceptions as well.
Yeah, well, thank you for that. I think that, Mayor, you talked about bike lanes. You're going to celebrate the opening of it sounds like a new bike lane to help increase access, safe access to a transit station, increasing access to EVs for ride-hail drivers. What can the partners here today do to support your efforts leading up to the games? What challenge would you offer folks to
Well, you
to
told
help?
me tree people are going to take care of our canopy.
They're on board.
No, seriously. We really appreciate the efforts of others, that's for sure. One of the things that we're focusing, again, I keep going back to infrastructure because it really is a big problem. We've had a problem with our street lights. They're copper lights, and that's a big problem because of copper theft, which has been massive. And we've tried to address it from an arrest, but it's whack-a-mole. And you can put in a new street light, and then 2 weeks later it's gone because they've stolen the copper. And for me, I said, why are we doing this? That makes no sense. Well, it's cheaper to do it that way. Well, it isn't if you're constantly replacing the same light. So now we've launched an effort for 60,000 solar lights. There's nothing to steal. And so, putting in solar lights. And we want to have many, many more. The other thing that I want to make sure of is that when the Olympics are here, I mentioned that I wanted it to be citywide. And the Olympic experience, and I certainly know this from Paris, but also if you think about it, when you go to the Olympics, you go because of your favorite sport. You're not watching every single thing that happens, which means you have a lot of free time. So it's an opportunity to promote our city, but I want it to be an economic uplift as well. And so we've been hosting business summits. We're doing our third one next month, but our first two attracted over 1,000 small businesses. And, LA 28 is committed to giving preference to local businesses because communities that would normally be left out, we want them involved and we want them to profit from the games. And so that's one way. So it wasn't just that we want everybody to participate in watch parties. We want people to profit from the games as well. We want to promote public transportation. We want to promote our sustainability goals and all of that. And it's an opportunity because, you'll have a captive audience. But there's also a cultural component to the Olympics. And LA 28 is doing the official one, but we're doing a community one. One of the things that I love in our city is the beautiful tradition of murals. So it's my dream that when you land in LAX the next time, you go to wait for your luggage, and there's a kiosk there where you can find all the local restaurants, the art, the culture, anything you want, and then obviously an app on your phone so that it is accessible and that you know what's existing. The other thing about LA is that the entire world lives here. And I'm sure there won't be a country that comes here that doesn't have their diaspora here. We want them to know how to connect. So it's about games for all, and that's what we mean by that. And it's about promoting LA as a very large, very spread out city, 500 square miles of our city, and is one of the most diverse cities in the world. So we want people to walk away going, wow, it's more than Hollywood. It's more than the beach. We love that too. You know, very important foundational parts of our city, but our city has so much more to offer.
Here's that. Yeah, thank you, Mayor. I love that vision. Mark, last question for you. We talked about commitments to action. What are you thinking about for C40 that you want to commit to action around from the games being your inspiration here in LA?
Well, certainly, you know, we're here for you any way that C40 can be helpful as you're preparing for the games. But actually, the challenge I've set myself for C40 for the next year really is for every city, the 100 cities, big cities around the world in C40 to have early warning systems for the major extreme weather hazards. Because actually most don't still. And we're seeing now with this, particularly with the ongoing effects of climate breakdown, but particularly in this super El Nino year, there's a heat dome over Europe at the moment. In my little country of England, 2,700 people died as a result of the heat in 1 week, 2 weeks ago. Because we're just not prepared. I've never lived in a house that has air conditioning. We don't have the kind of early warning systems that are prevalent. You know, Paris has just been experiencing wildfires just out in Fontainebleau, just outside of Paris. Wow. You know, completely unprecedented. And when we look across the C40 cities, we both see those that do have early warnings and systems in place are actually seeing, even though climate-related hazards are increasing, often deaths are decreasing because people are prepared. But in many parts of the world, you know, African cities, almost none in C40 have got early warning systems. Actually, very few in Europe do. So that's the challenge we're setting ourselves. How can we achieve that and do it really quickly? Not in 10 years' time, but in 1 year's time. And maybe, Matt, this is something we need to ask your help on, because this is for the cities that are much better and prepared on this to help the others.
Yeah, I just got my extreme heat text warning yesterday on my phone, thanks to your emergency team, and it's so important. Well, Mark, we'll do all we can to help you on that front. Mayor, I want to heap a little praise on you and your team as we close this conversation, because LACI's staff have been working with your staff, Department of Water and Power staff, the rest of your city agency staffs to remove obstacles to get charging infrastructure done before the game. So we think we'll talk about that later today. Some of your team will be part of that conversation about how we can get $50 to $100 million of investment that's ready to deploy in your city and our city to be ready by the game. So just thank you for all you do, your vision and your leadership, and leading us through these challenging times in our nation as well. And Mark, thank you for joining us as well. Please join me and give a huge round of applause for this conversation with Mayor Bass and Mark Watts.